Mathilde Loisel was a young woman with a lot of beauty and charm, but she was born into a poor family. She didn't have a dowry, which meant she didn't have money or a rich background to attract a wealthy man. Because of this, she ended up marrying a simple clerk who worked at the Ministry of Public Instruction. Though her husband was kind and cared for her, Mathilde wasn't happy with her life. She didn't have the nice clothes, jewelry, or luxurious lifestyle that she dreamed of. She often felt that she was born into the wrong life, as if she was meant to be rich and surrounded by beautiful things. And instead of this, her home was modest and plain. She felt embarrassed by the simple things around her, the old furniture, the cheap curtains, and the bare walls. The simple, plain life she had made her feel angry and frustrated. Even the sight of the little peasant woman who worked in their house reminded Mathilde of what she didn't have, and it made her dream of a life she could never reach. At dinner time, when she sat across from her husband at the small, round table, she couldn't help but feel disappointed. The tablecloth, which had been used for a few days, looked worn. On opposite her husband, holding the soup pot, smiled and said, "Ah, the good soup. I don't know anything better than that." But as she looked at the simple meal before them, her mind wandered to a life of luxury. She imagined grand and fancy dinners in beautiful rooms, with shining silverware and colorful tapestries on the walls. She thought about the delicious food served on beautiful plates that sparkled like jewels. She imagined the pleasure of sitting at a table full of elegant dishes, enjoying the soft pink meat of a perfectly cooked or the tender meat of a fish. The thought of being surrounded by friends, whispering sweet words, while smiling mysteriously, made her long for that kind of life even more. But instead, she sat in her modest home, with her simple meal, and felt the emptiness of the life she had. She had no gowns, no jewels, nothing. Yet, she loved nothing more than these material things. She yearned to be admired, envied, to be the center of attention, to be charming and sought after. She had a friend, a former schoolmate at the convent, a rich woman whom she didn't visit anymore, because seeing her made Mathilde feel sad or jealous. As Mathilde dreamed of this life, one evening, her husband came home, with a pleased expression, holding a large envelope. "There, something for you," he said. Mathilde quickly tore open the envelope and pulled out a printed card with these words: "The Minister of Public Instruction and Madame Georges Ramponneau request the honor of Mr. and Madame Loisel's company at the Palace of the Ministry on Monday evening, January 18th. But instead of being delighted, as her husband had hoped, Mathilde tossed the invitation onto the table and muttered, "What do you want me to do with that?" Her husband, confused, and replied, "Why, I thought you'd be happy. You never go out, and this is such a wonderful opportunity. I had to work hard to get it. It's very exclusive, and not many clerks are invited. The whole official world will be there." She shouted at him with an irritated look, and replied, "And what do you want me to wear?" He hadn't considered that. Stammering, he said, "Well, you could wear the gown that you wear at the theater. It looks good on you." His wife began to weep. 2 large tears ran down her face, moving slowly from the corners of her eyes to her mouth. What's wrong? What's wrong? He asked, alarmed. Wiping her tears, she replied in a calm voice, nothing. I just don't have a gown, so I can't go to this ball. Give your invitation to a colleague whose wife is better equipped than I am. He was devastated. After a moment, he said, let's see. How much would a simple, suitable gown cost, something you could wear again, on other occasions? She thought for a moment, calculating how much she could ask for, without making him immediately refuse, or be frightened by the cost. After a few seconds, she hesitated and said, I'm not sure, but I think I could manage it, for about 400 francs. He grew pale at the mention of that amount. He had been saving exactly that amount for a gun, to take on a shooting trip next summer, with some friends. But he said, very well, I'll give you the 400 francs. Just make sure to get a beautiful gown. As the ball neared, Mathilde became anxious, uneasy, and worried. Her gown was ready, but she felt incomplete. One evening, her husband asked, "What's the matter? You've been acting strange these past few days." She responded, "It bothers me that I have no jewelry, no adornment, nothing to make me look elegant. I'll feel out of place, poor even. I'd almost rather not go at all." Her husband offered, "You could wear fresh flowers. They're very stylish this season. For 10 francs, you can get a few beautiful roses." She wasn't convinced. "No, there's nothing worse than looking poor among women who are rich." "Don't be silly," her husband said. "Go visit your friend, Madame Forestier, and ask her to lend you some jewelry. You're close enough to her to do that." Mathilde's face lit up. "That's a great idea. I didn't think of that." The next day, she went to Madame Forestier and explained her problem. Madame Forestier led her to a wardrobe, opened it, and pulled out a large jewelry box. She offered Mathilde to pick whatever she liked. Mathilde tried on several pieces, bracelets, a pearl necklace, and a Venetian gold cross set with precious stones. She hesitated, unsure of what to choose, until she saw, in a black satin box, a dazzling diamond necklace. Her heart raced as she held it, fastening it around her neck, and admiring herself in the mirror. She asked, almost breathless, "Could I borrow just this one?" "Of course," Madame Forestier replied. Mathilde embraced her friend, kissed her, and left with the treasure. On the night of the ball, Mathilde was the star of the event. She was more beautiful, more elegant, and more charming than any other woman there. Men asked her name, sought to be introduced, and all the ministers wanted to dance with her. Even the minister himself noticed her. She danced, full of joy and passion, intoxicated by the pleasure of being admired. The evening was filled with happiness and the thrill of success. She and her husband left the ball at around 4 in the morning. He draped the wraps he had brought over her shoulders. It was plain and simple, much different from the fancy ball dress. She noticed this and wished she could leave to avoid being noticed by the other women who were wearing expensive furs. But her husband urged her to wait. "You'll catch cold outside. Let me get a cab." But she didn't listen to him and quickly went down the stairs. When they got to the street, they couldn't find a carriage and started calling out to the passing cabman. They walked toward the Seine, cold and frustrated. Finally, they found an old nightcab near the river. It took them home, and they climbed the stairs to their apartment in silence. The joy of the ball had come to an end. Once inside, Mathilde took off her wraps to look at herself one last time in the mirror, only to let out a horrified cry. The necklace was gone. Her husband, already half undressed, was confused. "What's wrong?" Mathilde turned to him, frantic. "I've lost Madame Forestier's necklace." He stood up, stunned. "What? How?" They searched the apartment, under the sofa cushions, in the pockets, in her clothes, but the necklace was nowhere to be found. "You're sure you had it when you left the ball?" her husband asked. "Yes, I felt it in the vestibule of the minister's house. But if we lost it in the street, we would have heard it fall. It must be in the cab." "Did you get the cab number?" she asked. "No." "Did you notice it?" "No." The realization struck them both at once. They were lost. Desperate, her husband rushed out to retrace their steps, hoping to find the necklace. He scoured the streets, visiting the police and the cab companies, offering a reward. But nothing came of it. A week passed without any hope. Finally, her husband said, "We must find a way to replace it." The next day, they went to the jeweler, listed on the necklace box. He confirmed that the necklace had been sold by another jeweler. They visited several jewelers, but finally, at the Palais Royal, they found a necklace they thought looked identical to the lost one. The cost was 40,000 francs, but they managed to buy it for 36,000 francs. But they didn't have that much money, so they begged the jeweler not to sell it for 3 days, as they would buy it after getting the money. They also made a deal that he would buy it back for 34,000 francs if they found the lost necklace before the end of February. Loisel possessed 18,000 francs, which his father had left him. And he borrowed the rest amount. He borrowed the other entire sum, putting everything on the line, loans from friends, usurers, and everything they could secure. He signed contracts without knowing if he could repay them, and purchased the necklace. When Mathilde returned the necklace to Madame Forestier, her friend seemed cold. "You should have returned it sooner. I might have needed it." She did not check the case, which was exactly what Mathilde had feared. If Madame Forestier had noticed the substitution, she might have thought Mathilde was a thief. After that, Mathilde knew the true meaning of poverty. She and her husband moved into a small attic apartment, fired their servant, and began a life of hardship. She cleaned, washed, carried water, and bargained at the market. Every month, they struggled to make ends meet. They faced one crisis after another. This life went on for 10 years. At the end of those 10 years, they had paid everything, all of it, with high interest and added costs. Madame Loisel looked old now. She had become a hard-working woman, strong and rough. With messy hair, crooked skirts, and red hands, she spoke loudly while cleaning the floor. But sometimes, when her husband was at work, she sat by the window and remembered that happy night long ago, the ball where she had been so beautiful and admired. What would have happened if she hadn't lost the necklace? Who knows? Life is strange and full of changes. It only takes a small thing to make or break us. One Sunday, after taking a walk in the Champs-Élysées to relax from the hard week, Madame Loisel saw a woman walking with a child. It was Madame Forestier, still young, beautiful, and charming. Madame Loisel felt emotional. Should she talk to her? Yes, she decided. Now that she had paid everything, she would tell her the whole story. She approached her. "Good day, Jean." Madame Forestier, surprised by the familiar greeting from this simple woman, didn't recognize her at first and said, "Madam, who are you? I don't know you. You must be mistaken." "No, I am Mathilde Loisel." Her friend gasped. "Oh, my poor Mathilde. How you've changed." "Yes, I've had a tough life, since I last saw you, full of poverty, and all because of you." "Because of me? How so?" "Do you remember the diamond necklace you lent me for the ministerial ball?" "Yes." "What about it?" "Well, I lost it." "What do you mean?" "You returned it." "I returned a necklace, exactly like it. It took us 10 years to pay for it. It wasn't easy for us, since we had nothing. But it's finally paid off, and I'm relieved." Madame Forestier stopped in surprise. "You mean you bought a diamond necklace to replace mine?" "Yes." "Didn't you notice? They were very similar." She smiled, feeling both proud and innocent. Madame Forestier, deeply moved, took her hands. "Oh, my poor Mathilde. My necklace was just paste. It was worth only 500 francs. Mathilde was shocked and don't know what to say.